Hey everyone, Steve from Backcountry Gallery here. This time around, we're going to talk about how to get sharper images when you're shooting from a vehicle. And the reason for this video is I get so many emails, I see so many examples online of people who are shooting from a vehicle and they're struggling to get sharp images. In this video, we're going to go over a bunch of tips that are going to help solve that problem. Let's get started right now. So, our very first step is to equalize the temperature inside the car with the outside air. We do that by rolling down the windows and shutting off our climate control. Now, the reason we do this is we don't want the different air temperatures mixing together. A lot of times, for example, you'll have warm air in the car and cool air outside. When you roll down the window and start shooting and that warm air comes out, it mixes with the cold air and causes heat distortion. Now, heat distortion is going to make it next to impossible to get a sharp photo. Your AF system's not going to work as well, and just shooting through that distortion, that mix of warm and cool air, is going to cause a loss of sharpness. Now, we don't have time in this video to really explain exactly what heat distortion is if you've never heard of it before, so I'll put a card above. Click that video because it's probably the #1 reason people don't get sharp images when they're shooting from the car, and it's probably in the top 2 or 3 reasons just in general that people don't get sharp images with long lenses. So we definitely want to make sure we equalize those temps. Okay, our next step is to make sure that we're not getting vibration from our motor, so we're going to want to shut off the engine to the car. Now, if you have an electric or a hybrid or something like that that kind of shuts itself off when you come to a stop, that's great. I have this old school Toyota, so I have to shut the engine off, and if you're in the same kind of boat, make sure you shut it off because we don't want that vibration to be transferred from the car to our lens and cause a loss of sharpness. In addition, just as a safety note, make sure you obviously pull off the road and you're not blocking traffic once you shut the car off. Next, let's talk window support. My solution for window support is actually pretty easy. I just use a piece of pipe insulation you get for a couple bucks from the hardware store. Just slip it right over the edge of the window, and there you go. You can take your camera, place it right there, and start shooting. It's very comfortable. It works really well. I've used this method for a long time. It dampens any kind of vibrations you're getting as you're moving around in the car or whatever. And it's very affordable, and it's nice to have it right there. The other nice thing, what I really like about it, is that I can easily adjust the height of the window, so I can change my shooting height really easily, just like so. So honestly, this has worked really well. It's extremely affordable, but there are also other options out there where I've seen where you can have this big mount here that's probably going to be more stable than this, but this has worked well for me. And by the way, as a side note, if you are using a system like this and you find that you're at kind of a slow shutter speed and you're having a hard time getting a nice sharp photo, one solution is to shoot in longer bursts. The more you shoot, the better your chances of getting something sharp out of that sequence. All right, one thing I forgot to mention when you have your camera set on this is you can use stabilization or VR with this. A lot of times people are a little bit hesitant to use it if there's some kind of additional support going on, but in this case it's not enough support that it would cause any kind of detriment to your photos when used in combination with stabilization or VR. So definitely, if you're at a slower shutter speed, make sure you turn on that stabilization. Now, as a side note, you want to be set before you encounter your animal. So if you're going along and you see something up the road that you want to photograph, don't wait till you get to that animal to say, oh, let me get my window in position, let me put this up here. Look at how much movement I'm doing by trying to get everything set. If the animal's right there in front of me, guess what? He's gone. What you want to do is get this all set and then pull up slowly to the animal. Now, I'm not going to say you're never going to scare the animal off like that, but you stand far less chance of doing it than if you get up to him and start making all that movement. Now, sometimes you'll see a subject, and maybe that subject's not quite so intimidated by your presence. So instead of shooting from the car, you're like, hey, I'm going to get out of the car so I have a little more flexibility. The #1 mistake I see people make when they do this is they come over to their car, they brace themselves like this, and they start shooting. The problem with this is the exact same one we had when we had different temperatures inside the cabin versus the outside. We're going to get heat distortion. You're going to have hot air coming off this hood, because most of the time the hood's going to be pretty warm. You're going to have hot air coming off the hood, it's going to mix with the air above it, and the next thing you know, you're not going to be able to get a sharp photo. My advice is, if you're going to shoot outside the car, make sure that you stand at least 6 feet, 2 meters, say, away from the vehicle. That way, any heat coming off the vehicle will not affect your images. Now this next tip goes hand in hand with the last one. So if you're getting out of your car, sometimes you're like, hey, you know, it's a little bit dim or a little bit dark and I want a tripod or a monopod for some extra support. The problem I see that happens all the time is people are not prepared for this contingency. What happens is they have their tripod locked in the trunk or it's not set up and it's just inconvenient to get to. So instead of using the tripod or the monopod, they just try to handhold it and they end up with, you guessed it, soft photos. The key to avoiding that is to make sure everything is set and ready to go. I have my tripod partially extended in my back seat at all times. Even if I think I'm not going to need it at the beginning of the day, I just take a few seconds to get it ready and get it prepped so that if I do decide that I need it later on in the day, I can go over here, I can grab it, and I'm ready to shoot on a nice, stable platform. Finally, make sure when you're shooting that you're staying as still as possible, and you ask your passengers, if there are any, to stay as still as possible. When you are trying to shoot and people are moving around, the car's moving and all of that movement is transmitted directly to the camera and lens. Even if you're on some kind of a support system, if the car's moving, this is moving with it. So that's a huge problem. Another cautionary thing to think about is if you're shooting on a windy day and you're trying to deal with slow shutter speeds, if the wind's rocking the vehicle, you're going to have a hard time with those slower shutter speeds. So not much you can do about that other than to be aware that it happens and to kind of wait between gusts. So that about does it for our tips. All right, that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. And by the way, if you're a Nikon shooter and you love getting sharp photos, make sure you check out my ebook, Secrets to the Nikon Autofocus System. I have a version for DSLR and a version for mirrorless. We're talking hundreds of pages written with one thing in mind, and that's helping you get sharper photos. So make sure you check those out. You can have them for less than the price of a lunch date at McDonald's. And by the way, if you haven't stopped by, make sure you check out the BCG forums over at the website. Lots of friendly people there. It's a great place to ask questions and post your own photos. Finally, make sure you sign up for that free email newsletter at my site so you never miss one of these videos or one of my articles or even a workshop opportunity. And finally, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, and get notified. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.